Welcome. Good afternoon. My name is Diana Martin. I'm the Executive Director here at Hourglass, and I'd like to welcome you to today's First Friday Forum with our Lancaster County Commissioners. Today I'm joined by Commissioners Alice Yoder, Josh Parsons, and Ray D'Agostino. I appreciate each of you making time out of your busy schedules to be with us here today. We've been hosting this forum at Hourglass since 2010, so we've been doing this for a while, and you can see our members really look forward to it. We have a nice full house today. Today's forum will kick off with a few questions that were developed by us here at Hourglass to help get the conversation started. One of the areas we're going to focus on is the new Lancaster County Correctional Facility. This will be the county's largest capital project to date, so this is a big project. We're going to get into that a little bit. And after that, as you can see, the forum is called Ask the Commissioners. So we want to hear from all of you, your questions and conversation on issues that are relevant to Lancaster County. I know we also have a number of folks joining us online, so if you're on the chat and you have any questions, feel free to drop those, and I'll do my best to monitor them as we go around doing the Q&A. Before we get started, I'd like to thank our First Friday Forum sponsors, Rogers & Associates, for everything that you do for the community, making these forums possible. Also the Ware Center for hosting us, and Shoemaker for providing our live streaming services. So with that, I think if we're ready, we'll go ahead and get started. Actually, I'm going to start with you, Commissioner Yoder. Welcome. As our newest commissioner, I wanted to give you a chance to introduce yourself. I'm sure many people are familiar with your work at Penn Medicine, Lancaster General Health, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to the community and to talk about why you wanted to run for commissioner.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Super excited about being new in this role and serving as your new county commissioner. So I'm looking around the room and I see several of you that do know me, and probably know me more from the work, as you mentioned, Diana, about work that I've done at Penn Medicine, Lancaster General Health. But I'd like to kind of tell you a little bit about myself so you can get a sense of how I will operate in this role of county commissioner. So prior to 35 years, I came to Lancaster County 35 years ago. And prior to that, I lived in Pittsburgh, the Washington, D.C. area. But some of you that know me and have heard me speak before, you're probably thinking her last name is Yoder, but she sure doesn't sound like a Yoder. So I'll get that question out of the way as you hear me speak today. And I still have a dialect, even though I've been out of New York for 40 years. But I grew up in the projects of Queens, New York. And I say that because it really shapes a lot of the way that I think about community, the role of government, and what really makes people healthy. In addition to that, I'm the first person in my family to graduate from college. Actually, my parents didn't graduate from high school. And when I went to college, I went to become a nurse. And back in those days, that was one of the professions that were really encouraged for women to go into. That was in the 70s. And I chose that profession because it would provide an income that would allow me to be self-sufficient. And at that point, my family needed to have us be as self-sufficient as we can. I'm one of 4 siblings. And then soon after that, I worked as a critical care nurse for 5 years. And during that time, that's when I started thinking that healthcare and hospitals are sick care. And I was interested in healthcare and what makes people healthy, what makes communities healthy. So that really started my journey about thinking about wellness, health promotion, and how do we keep people from getting sick in the first place. And so when I went to graduate school, that's what I focused on at Villanova, was to do that. And then if you followed some of my tenure at Lancaster General, it was focused on women and children and really prevention. And the work that I've done in the community has always been collaborative, addressing some of the significant issues in the community, bringing people together to identify solutions. At that point, then, I realized how important systems and policy changes are. So I've implemented a lot of programs over my time here and redesigned some systems, particularly around children and youth. But I realized how important that is from a county level, and that was one of the main reasons why I ran for county commissioner. And also, opportunities related to the new jail, which is going to be our feature, what we're going to talk about today, which is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity where I'm focused on rehabilitation rather than punishment. So that's some of my background that really shapes a way a lot of how I work. The last thing I'll say for those of you that don't know me, I really focus on data and best practices a lot, to the point where it gets a little boring. So maybe I'll get like electric collar and you can say, Alice, stop talking about that, because it's not always exciting for people. But that's kind of the lens that I'll use. I'm thoughtful about cost, as well as using data driven as well. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Alice. This is Alice's first week on the job, so she's hitting the ground running. We'll keep that in mind as we're going through our questions today. I think you're on, day 4, so you're doing great. So I just wanted to follow up with a question for our 2 veteran commissioners at the table and give you a chance. Also, congratulations on your recent re-election. I know inauguration was just this week, so that's a big milestone. And I'd like to give you both a chance to talk about some of your highlights from your work in 2023, and would love to hear your proudest accomplishment from last year.
Well, there we go. Thank you. Thank you for having us. It's good to be back with Hourglass, and appreciate the sponsors who make it possible, and appreciate seeing many friends. We weren't sure anyone would show up, so we're glad to see a full house. And we almost had a bad start to 2024. We thought we had lost Alice already. So we're glad that we all made it here, and it's good to be joined by Alice. We've worked with her for many years on different things, and it's good to have a new board, fresh eyes on problems, and we're really looking forward to a productive 2024. So in 2023, I would just say, we're really proud of what our team, and it was a team effort, was able to accomplish over 2023, but over the last few years. And I don't know that I have one single proudest accomplishment, but, whether it be, we try to be a government that can set an example for other levels of government, whether that be no tax increase in your county property taxes in 11 years, whether that be the 3rd lowest tax rate of the 67 counties in Pennsylvania, the lowest of any large county, whether that's paying down $100 million of debt, getting our bond rating raised. We have the most savings in the bank of any time in Lancaster County history, at least as far as I can go back in our books. We're the number one county in the nation, as you all know, for farmland preservation. We're one of the safest counties in Pennsylvania as far as public safety, and the safest large county. We've worked very hard on infrastructure. We repaired or replaced all structurally deficient county-owned bridges across the county. And we're tackling tough problems. We've tackled the opioid epidemic. Alice and I were actually co-chairs of Joining Forces, which is the countywide effort on the opioid epidemic since 2017, long before she was a commissioner. And I give her a lot of credit for most of the work, and her team, but that made a huge difference in this county. Tackling big problems like the prison, which we're going to talk about, but that's been an issue that for decades has been discussed, and frankly, the can has been kicked down the road. We have out at the current prison the best in 1850s technology, and it's been a long time in coming to deal with that problem, and we're dealing with that. So I would say, we're doing what almost no other level of government is doing, which is tackling hard problems, solving problems every day, and living within our means. And we've also had good relationships with, since I've been on the board, all the commissioners. We have our issues from time to time, especially during political season, but we've had good relationships and been able to work together, and I expect that to continue.
Okay. Well, I want to add my thanks to the Hourglass for having us. I remember coming here years ago. I was a regular at Hourglass and always looked forward to coming here and listening to the commissioners. And then it dawned on me as I got elected, I'm going to have to be up here someday. So I understand, Alice. But I want to say that I am incredibly humbled and just feel so privileged and appreciative to the citizens of Lancaster County to give me another opportunity here to serve another term, especially with these two. Josh and I, of course, have worked together over the last 4 years in a very good team-oriented way. But as Josh noted, we've also done that with our other commissioner, who when I first came on was Craig, and then John, and now Alice. And yes, Alice and us have worked together over the years, and so that's a good thing. We kind of can get out of the way the introductions and understanding each other in terms of where we're coming from. That should help us have a good relationship, the three of us working together on the County Board of Commissioners. Like Josh, I don't know if I have a single thing that I could say that I'm most proud of. I'm going to list, and people know me, I'm detail-oriented, so I'm going to list 6 things. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail on these 6 things, but I do tend to be a little granular with some things. So in no particular order, quite frankly. Of course, yes, the county correctional facility we're working on, we're going to talk about that a little bit later, so I'm not going to delve into that, but that's certainly something we've been working on and really happy the way that we are approaching it. Very deliberative manner, so I'll leave that there until later. ARPA, we've received, like all the communities across the county, across the state, and across the nation received ARPA funds. I'm really excited about the fact that we've been able to deploy those funds, which we didn't expect or ask for. And quite frankly, some can make the case we didn't need, but the fact of the matter is we have it, and our goal has been to use those funds to invest in county government and the community on projects that will have long-lasting, long-term, potentially transformational way, as opposed to putting that money into continued operations for either us or for any other organization. And so, for instance, we had round 1 of the community requests. We received 100 applications. We've deployed and invested $22 million, roughly about $22 million in the community. Community infrastructure, conservation, preservation, clean water, special needs childhood health care, housing, water, sewer, stormwater, all manner of things. And we're ready in 2024 here to deploy some more funds in round 2. We also approved something called CPACE, and I know someone here from CPACE. We approved that. We continue to look at our economy. We have a great economy. We have the low unemployment rate. Just interviewed with Channel 27, 2.3%, historic. And that's because of the diversity of our economy, the institutions, the business institutions we have, the collaborative nature among everyone in the community, whether it's workforce development, businesses, education, all levels of government. We're all working together. So that's great. But CPACE is a financing tool, no government funds and no red tape necessarily. Helps to get businesses a financing tool for clean energy, retrofitting for efficiency, to help them grow their business, but also be good stewards of our energy and our economy. We approved a volunteer service tax credit. First time in the county. It was something that was allowed by state law. It was updated a couple years ago. We've taken advantage of that update. While county government is not responsible, in the Commonwealth, every level of government, we have quite a few different governments around. We all have our roles. Local government is, about one of the things that they're responsible for is ambulance and firefighting and police. But the volunteer service tax credit, $150 of a rebate to those who volunteer. We adopted a county health and medical preparedness plan for the first time ever, thanks to our Health Advisory Council and to our EMA. And I'll end on the fact that we, in-house, did a complete overhaul of the compensation salary administration plan for our staff to bring all of our different positions in alignment with the market rate. And we're poised to be able to keep that going, quite frankly, into the future with the staffing changes that we've made over the last couple years. I'll end on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, since we're at the first week of the year, we're sort of at that unique opportunity where we can look back and look forward. And I'd love to hear from each of you what your top concerns and priorities are for Lancaster County as we head into 2024.
Certainly I mentioned earlier, so we're talking about the jail, so I'm glad we're gonna go into a deeper dive with that. That's certainly on my list. I do believe this is a unique year, particularly related to the election. So really making sure that we have that run as smooth. We've had some glitches in terms of mailings that were sent out, things like that, that we can work on and do a better job in. But this is like a year when I think it's going to be really important to make sure that we educate the public and really focus on making sure that everything goes really smoothly this year. We want to do that every year, but this year since it's a presidential year, is going to be particularly of interest in terms of making that happen. Another area that I'm very interested in is the issue related to homelessness and what's happening from a community standpoint and how multifaceted that is. So I really feel like from what I heard from constituents during the 14 months that I was campaigning and beyond in my previous role too, that we think about how we think about homelessness as a continuum as it relates to affordable housing, and what do we need to be thinking about doing it with in the community, and then the role of government, which is not going to settle everything, but how do we bring people together, connect the dots, and try to address that issue as much as we can, again, in collaboration with public-private partnerships to be able to make that happen. But I think it needs a higher level of emphasis from county government, and I think we're going to be able to do that moving forward in the new year. I am also interested in, since we have a new jail, we have issues related, we have to make sure the election is really in good shape, a lot of priorities that we can all have. But I still want to keep the idea about investigating a public health department within our county, at least being able to have the opportunity to potentially bring in a consultant to do a plan that's very transparent to the public, to my fellow commissioners, to do it together, to see what it would actually take. We've talked about this. Some people are encouraged and want to have a health department. Some do not, but we have not really gotten to the point where we actually, as a community, and as a government, look to see what the plan looks like. How much is it going to cost? What's it going to take? What are we leaving on the table? What are the things that we could actually do now that will save us money in the long run, as well as improve the health and well-being of our communities as well? So I'm hoping that we can at least start to explore what that might look like in this year, knowing that there's lots of other and really important things that we need to focus on. And then the last thing that I would say is that related to the homelessness situation, I did mention about how the issue related to affordable housing has some impact on addressing the homelessness issue. But I'm also very committed to Places 2040 and the county's comprehensive plan. And I really feel that that answers many questions that I hear from people in the community, whether it's climate change, implementing many of the elements that are in the plan will help with a mitigation of some of those issues related to that. But I think in terms of the beautiful nature of Lancaster County, which we all know and love, the open spaces, how do we keep the open spaces in our community the way they are so in 10, 20, 30 years they're still there? Then that means how do we think about infilling into municipalities and townships and boroughs? As you all know, we're, being a Commonwealth, county government's responsible for developing a plan with the community and with the municipalities and putting the plan out there. And it's up to the 60 municipalities, townships, boroughs, and the city to really think about how to implement that plan, how they want to do that. But I feel like there's a role for the county commissioners and county government to have those discussions openly with the municipalities because of how important that is for the future of our community, so that we need housing and we need it quick. And so, but we have to be deliberate in where the housing goes for people of all income levels. So affordable, certainly, but really all income levels. We're short on housing as the last one, right? It was the last session was all about housing? Or was it 2 sessions ago?
Projects on
housing, just a few, I know.
Yeah, there's a big topic there.
Yeah, so that's it. So those are my tops. There's more, but that's the top ones.
Well, we have a lot of priorities in 2024, and we have some concerns. I think overall we feel very good about where our community is. We have an outstanding, incredible community with people willing to step forward and help in so many different aspects. So that's the good news. I think, one of the things I want to focus on maybe is better communication. Communication is difficult these days because people use many different channels to communicate, different social media, news, the newspaper, and I want to talk about that a little because I had a chance to watch one of your recent forums with Jess King, Bob Krasny, and the head of WITF. And, it's not so much a concern for regular people out there because in large part they've given up reading L&P, but it's a concern for this kind of group because much of this group is, when I see the emails that come out from this group or the forums, they're shaped around often articles from L&P. And you should know that those articles often, especially with regard to anything that touches on things they care about, whether it's county government or politics, often have substantial misstatements or left out portions or frankly just false portions. And I'll give you an example. So here's an article about our 2023 budget process. And the article says, the preliminary report showed numbers that would represent a $4.4 million budget deficit next year, though Parsons said that it's typical for how Lancaster County devises its budgets. Throughout the year, he said cost cutting and unspent funds will eventually make up the difference. Last year, the commissioners passed a budget with a deficit that later ended up in the black. So what's wrong with that? Well, our budget hearings and all of our hearings, we have multiple public hearings a week, public meetings a week, which any of you can come to. They're all on videotape and they're all on audio tape. You can look them up. So this quote, none of this ever happened. And it's not true. There was no deficit. There was no hole. I never said it. So this was made up out of whole cloth and it's on video. So when you have material misstatements like this over and over and over again, it is a substantial problem. We had it most recently with Commissioner Trescott's sort of going away article. The writer said that he asked Commissioner D'Agostino and I for comment. We declined to comment. We didn't. We said that you need to ask the questions on the record at the public meeting on video so that the question is on video and the answer is on video so that it can't be manipulated. We didn't decline to comment. So that was not true. We had the article this morning about the coroner's office. Has substantial misstatements in it. I actually have a difference with the coroner on this issue. It says the county is basically opposing open records. It's the coroner doing it. Now, I know pleadings can be confusing, but this could be solved by asking a question on the record and getting the answer from us. And it can be solved by not starting with a narrative, and that is what's going on. So the LP now refuses to ask questions on the record at our meeting on video. The reason is just this kind of reason, so that we have the question on the record and the answer on the record. I'm always willing to do things like this. I went to LMP and did a long live stream where they lined up reporters and hit me with questions one after another because the live stream can't be altered. I'm always willing to do that, but I'm not willing to have things altered. And that's what's going on. I have a larger concern. I watched the prior forum, and so now we have this joint venture of LMP, WITF, and Steinman Foundation. Steinman Foundation has hired Jess King. I don't know if Jess is here. Sometimes she's here. Nice person. There she is. I like Jess. She's a fierce partisan warrior. She had a fierce partisan battle against Congressman Smucker. I respect her for that. I'm in that arena too. I respect that. But that's what she is. LMP formally reported that Jess is the founder of Lancaster Stands Up, and then they retracted it. I don't know if you are or not, but you're certainly closely associated with them. Lancaster Stands Up is a group that came to our commissioners meeting with a big banner. On it had a hammer and sickle, and it had the words, 1917 can come again, watch your backs, meaning the Russian Revolution. So Steinman Foundation has now hired Jess. They're sitting up here together talking about the news industry. They're sort of saying the quiet part out loud. There's a deputy editor who tweeted that Republicans are, quote, the pro-child massacre party, literally. Could anyone say that in your business and continue to have a job? Say that about any group. I see Allison here. If I said the Clean Water Partners are the pro-child massacre party, literally, could someone have a job after saying that? No. Well, you can at LMP, apparently. So that forum was fascinating in many ways. Mr. Krasny said, essentially, politicians don't want LMP because we don't want a watchdog or something along those lines, the demise of local news. And that's, the problem is LMP, if you get outside the bubble and talk to people, when Ernie Schreiber and people were running that newspaper, they wanted to provide information that made you a better citizen and objective information. And the Plain Sec got that newspaper, and they've largely given it up now. If you go out and talk to them, they'll tell you, well, it's because we want birth notices, we want death notices, and we want objective news, not a narrative. And so, hey, I have a chance. I have a chance to talk here. I want to talk about my concerns. So, those things are a substantial problem for groups like this if you believe and if you're framing your forums around those things where you have substantial misstatements over and over again. I would like for there to be an objective newspaper, an objective watchdog for all of us. That would make all of us better. But that's not what we have right now. You should be aware of that when you're framing these forums.
Okay. Hello? There we go. Okay, it's working. So I'm just going to, regarding that, if you go back a couple years ago, I raised a major concern about LNP. All I'm going to say is that I agree that it's still a concern, quite frankly. And anybody wants any, information, specific, objective information about what you're hearing, I have it. And I've addressed that with the reporters. All right, because what's really important is that the community have good information, the right information. That's important. All right, so 2024, what are some of the top priorities and things we're going to be working on? Of course, the correctional facility, we're going to park that until we get to the next portion of this. Our budget, quite frankly, I'm sure like many of you in your own budgets, whether personally or business, we have been affected by inflation and all facets of inflation, whether it's rising costs, supply chain issues, need for more labor or workforce, interest rates, the whole gamut has really affected all of us, including government, quite frankly. Now, we've got a great team. We've been doing some good things to make sure that those impacts are mitigated as much as possible. I mean, as you heard or should have heard, our budget that we adopted for 2024, our expenses only increased just around 1%. Inflation was running anywhere between 5 and 3% over the year. So I'm proud of that, but the effects are still with us, and we're going to, because it's not like magically we're going to turn back the clock, and interest rates are going to fall and costs are going to fall again. So we have to dig deep, just like many of you in your business or in your personal lives, to figure out how we're going to deal with this ongoing. It'll moderate, but by the same token, the damage is still with us. So. That's something I'm committed to working with our team on with respect to budgets moving forward. We have a correctional facility that we've got to build and then obviously operate, so that will have an effect on our budget, at least preliminarily dealing with the borrowing we're going to need to do with that and fit that into our budget. I'm really excited about the fact that with the ARPA funds and also internal funds, we've set aside a couple years ago, the very first time, a capital improvement plan. We've used those dollars to do really great things to upkeep and maintain our county-owned infrastructure. Josh hit upon the bridges. We're doing other things with other assets that we have. But IT was a big issue in terms of an opportunity over the last year. It will continue to be in 2024 to upgrade our IT, information technology infrastructure. We just approved a new enterprise software system, which is the backbone of the services, the data, the information, how we work efficiently and effectively as a team to provide the services both internally and externally to the citizens, the citizens of Lancaster County. I'm really excited about that coming on board, because it's really going to drive efficiency and effectiveness, not only in the provision of services, but also cost effectiveness. Goes back to that budget issue, right? And then election, it was mentioned by Alice that we have an important election, all important, but of course a lot of people focus, many people come out during the 24 or the presidential election, And as chair of the Board of Elections, you know, I'm committed to continuing the things that we have done over the last few years, which is to drive integrity, veracity, and transparency in our elections. And I'm looking forward to working with the team on that this coming year. And then also mentioned was the comprehensive plan. I'm the liaison to the County Planning Commission. We have some members of the Planning Commission, staff here, the Planning Department. Really proud of what they're doing in the community with municipalities, developing comprehensive plan, regional comprehensive plans, so that local municipalities can save your hard-earned tax dollars, working with professionals on staff of the County Planning Commission, instead of hiring a consultant, to have the professional comprehensive plan that is in sync with the county's comprehensive plan, and then assist municipalities to the regional effort to look at land use ordinances to implement both the regional, the municipal, regional, and county comprehensive plan. I'm really excited about where that's heading in the coming year. So with that, I'll end my time.
Great, thank you. So I gave up drinking this month. I might have to pick it up again after this forum. No, I appreciate all of your thoughts. We're gonna jump into another topic that's come up several times today that is one I know it's on people's mind. It's the Lancaster County Correctional Facility. It's one of the most significant projects on the horizon here for Lancaster. And I'd love to start with just an update on where we are with that project and what we can expect here in 2024.
Ray and I could just briefly, I'll just briefly, you can fill in some details. I mean, we're proud of where we are. This has been a long time coming project, and we've been systematically working through the steps on this. First step was putting the county in an excellent financial position so that you could do a big capital project. The next step was land acquisition. I give Ray a lot of credit for doing that in a very collaborative way, getting really a perfect piece of property, because you have to be close to the courthouse, 3 sides river, 1 side cemetery. There's some neighbors across the creek, but even they have been very collaborative in working with us. Then we got basically started putting our team on board, and now we're beginning the planning process. So I know you have more detail, Ray. I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So that the first thing you should know in 2023 is that we did complete the acquisition of all the land that's necessary. The last piece was a piece for an emergency access drive. So now that's completely in hand right now, and that's good. Appreciate the collaborative nature with Lancaster Township, which is the township where this is being located. So two big things occurred in 2023. Will set the stage for 2024 and beyond, quite frankly. And they were 2 big pieces of the puzzle for the new correctional facility. The first thing is a needs assessment, which is the very first thing that needs to be done, right? When you're looking at building something like a correctional facility, you need to know what the needs are, set the stage, then to design a facility. We all know that what a correctional facility does, but do we? Do we really understand what the needs are in this community when it comes to building a new facility, considering that we've had the same facility in some way, shape, or form, as Josh said, since the 1850s? That's 170 years. And so we have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, as we have mentioned before. So that needs assessment was done by our owner's representative, which we hired the year before. And it was done using information gathered through the community, through about criminal justice trends, data from the correctional facility, or current facility itself, from the courts, from other agencies that deal with the criminal justice system. So all that data was put into a blender, so to speak. It was actually algorithms and spreadsheets and whatnot. And it kind of told us where we might be looking at heading into the future with respect to the needs in terms of the space, by looking at the population that we have, and could be having in the future. And then also looking at numbers. Numbers are important in terms of population. So all that was put into a document. In fact, that document, the next document, and other documents are all available online. So if you have, this will be recorded, but if you have a pen and paper, it's LCCF-P LCCF.com, LCCF, Lancaster County Correctional Facility, -PA.com. Notes are on there, documents that I'm talking about here, and things that are very important to this process are all available. We have listening sessions. The notes of the listening sessions are online. This is a deliberative and transparent process that we're leading here, and we appreciate the folks that are a part of the process, both internally and externally. So we have the needs assessment. The next step that was just completed was to have a draft program report. So you take that needs assessment, you say, okay, well, if these are the needs, then what's that look like in terms of a facility, at least initially in the space needs, the adjacency of those spaces from an operational, programmatic standpoint. Very important document. Also uses the data in that assessment to come up with a potentially projected size. This is where we're at now. Looking at the draft program report, which is online, there's a public listening session on January 10th, which is Wednesday, January 10th, I believe it's 6 o'clock, over at 102, 104 at the County Government Administrative Center. We will then, as a prison board, as a community, as a board of commissioners, discuss that program report to finalize it, as final as something can be, because when you actually then finalize that and you devise plans, actual construction drawings to bid, those of you who've been involved in projects, construction projects, or any kind of infrastructure project, or even building a house, what happens over time, those things can change, and that's a good thing, and especially through value engineering. So don't hear me when I say it's final and that's what it's going to be. It's final until we go through the process, and it's always going to be a process where it evolves, looking at the information we have, the data we have, talking to professionals who are going to help us through the next phase, which is design of the facility, the actual physical design, bidding, and construction, which we hope will hopefully begin that process in earnest later this year. So that's where we are with the project at this point, where we've been.
Thank you for that update. I'd love to hear from each of you what you see as your top priorities for the new jail.
I'll be fast because I want to get to your questions. I stirred you all up, so I want to take your hard questions. Priorities are public safety. This is about public safety and a focus on outcomes. As a former prosecutor, I will say that the criminal justice system for many years focused on inputs, meaning locking people up. We want to be focused on outcomes. We want people who come out, who are successful at reentry, successful citizens, and don't come back into the criminal justice system. We want a modern, professional facility. We want a facility that reduces recidivism.
I'm excited about what's in the plan so far. For those of you that didn't get to see it, there's a really big focus on mental health and substance use disorder and data collection. So I'm really interested in seeing form follows function in my mind when we're building a new facility. So if we're really clear on what the function needs to be, then as we build the physical layout, that's what it needs to be based on, is what the function that needs to happen inside that. So what that means is some of the things that cannot happen in the current space because the space is not adequate is to address people that have substance use disorder and be able to help them, again, as they look at reentry. And the same thing with mental health, the same thing with job placement. So we want to make sure we have a physical facility that allows that to happen, even with women that are pregnant that are in the jail. How do we make that delivery at the hospital and what needs to happen with the bonding between the mother and the baby effective there too. So I've been involved in building projects, and the rubber meets the road as we start building and realizing, no, it's going to cost more than what we thought, and we have to start cutting. Plan to be a big advocate to make sure we're doing those things that are going to prevent recidivism. Those of you that know me, I think I might have mentioned this already, I'm very interested in data and data collection, and I'm excited about the database that's going to be used for the prison. And how we can collect the information so we really know what the needs are. We know what's working. We're implementing evidence-based practices across the country. There's been lots of things done that have shown that it makes the public safer. It enhances the health of the individual and can change the trajectory of their life. If at this particular point in their life we intercept with good programs and support, we prevent recidivism. it's also financially the smart thing to do. It's an ounce of prevention or it's a pound of cure. At that point in someone's life, we'll wind up saving money for taxpayers in the long run if we invest in that. The last thing I'll say is the light bulb went off for me, and I apologize if I sound a little ignorant on this one, but as I have always been interested in the idea that we would have a new a jail in our community that could meet these needs. But what I then realized was the difference, and when I was campaigning, this was like a frequently asked question. They thought that we had some, as a county commissioner, we had say over the judicial side of things, so people didn't really understand the different parts of government. So for me, it's sort of like we have this building that we're going to put together that's going to be a number amount of beds and all that. But on the judicial side, a lot of things that could happen there that are, again, evidence-based, that actually will prevent someone from ever reaching the prison is real important. Now, county commissioners, we don't have responsibility over that, but I'm really hoping for collaboration and thought between the whole criminal justice system from a community. Here's a building that we're putting together, but then criminal justice system is the whole system that's outside that building. So I'm also interested in the great work that a lot of the community partners and other organizations are doing so that we can just actually look at the criminal justice system, have data to support who are the people, how we can support people. And again, that's going to have a real big impact on the number of beds that we need or don't need within the jail.
I don't have too much to add, quite frankly, to what my colleagues have already said. I do want to say, though, a big shout out to the prison current facility staff, the warden, and quite frankly, even Josh, who put together, really changed things around in that facility over the last several years. I know that Josh worked on prison staff, worked on some reforms that you're talking about at the judicial level when you were a clerk of courts. That's helped tremendously because it'd be a different story, quite frankly, if we were, and that's been acknowledged even by the courts and everybody who's looked at this. We'd be in a different position today if we were looking at designing a facility back, 10, 15 years ago. But the facility needs to have the space. I agree with the program, the idea that form follows function. We've done a great job of providing services and programs and whatnot to help individuals live better lives, but it's just not really conducive as much as it should be in the current facility. So I'm really looking forward for that new facility to do that, both in terms of staff and their needs, and also the folks that obviously reside there for a little bit of a time.
I'm going to give you my last question so we have time to get to the audience. I'm going to give you a 2-in-1. How do you anticipate the new correctional facility could impact the county budget moving forward over the next 5 years? And what's the present thinking on what will happen to the current prison site on East King Street when it's no longer in use?
Well, the budget, we do budgets yearly. You have your debt that you borrow, and we've been paying down our debt and raising our bond rating and building up our reserves in order to be able to do a big capital project. But obviously, it's going to be expensive. We don't know how expensive yet, but costs have gone up significantly because of inflation. So you borrow, and then you have to have bond payments, just like you have a mortgage, as part of your budget. So our goal would be to have those payments not be such that they are a massive drain on the budget. So we're going to have to see as we go forward with the design, see what the cost is, and then how we can structure that financially. We have a good budget team. We have a good financial team. So more to come on that. With regard to the current facility, it's a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity for the city, a great opportunity for the county to have a whole city block to redevelopment. I think the castle is cool. I would like to see it saved, but I don't know whether that's realistic. There's no requirement that it be saved. And so we're going to have to work closely with the city because it's really a significant zoning issue. So I think Ray's more of an expert on zoning than I am. Maybe he wants to chime in.
Yeah, I think the goal, and I agree with you, by the way. I've mentioned a few potential Lancaster County businesses or others who might want to take that castle piece by piece and put it somewhere else for business purposes. If you do, give us a call. But I think the goal should be really for both the city and the county is that when the last person leaves and closes the door at that correctional facility over on King Street, is that the keys can be turned over to someone else who then transform it into something that it's in the city. into something that the city really wants to see. We don't have any control over zoning. Currently, the land that is 5 acres, a block, is zoned only for a detention facility or emergency services like police or fire or ambulance. So that has to be changed. The city just literally not long ago adopted a new comprehensive plan which calls for that area to become more mixed use. That's great. It's probably a good fit for that area. It's already somewhat of a mixed use, but building on that. So if you know about how zoning works, land use, I should say, you have a comprehensive plan, then you you amend your land use ordinances to come into compliance, if you will, or general consistency is the term in the MPC, Municipal Planning Code, with your comprehensive plan. So the city is already starting to think about that, obviously. I know the city was also applying for what's called a small area plan. They've done small area plans before. This one would look at that area to get into more granular detail and prepare for the idea of someone or some entities purchasing that property to transform it into what the city wants to see. We're fully committed as a county to work with the city so that we can achieve that goal, is to turn the keys over to someone, because the taxpayers deserve that, right? 170 years of putting millions and millions and millions of dollars into that facility, and the city having to host that in that area. We both have an interest in seeing that transformed into something that they would like to see. And so we're committed to that. That process is ongoing.
Thank you. Well, we can take a few questions from the audience. If you have a question, raise your hand high so I can see. And please, if you would state your name or an organization if you want, and I'll see how quickly I can get around to everyone.
Hi, I'm Jess King. I didn't know I'd come with the pleasure of being personally attacked today, but I did want to just speak to a few things that you brought up, Commissioner. I'm actually honestly really concerned about some of the things that you raised, and honestly it's about a lot of elemental First Amendment rights and the right of a free press and the right of free speech. I haven't heard your questions about inaccuracies in LNP, but I'm sure that your recorded statements will be fact-checked and published to see what's there. I fear and I wonder, and honestly I have a couple questions for you about that this feels like it's more of a vendetta against an opinion section, which is, as you know, completely separate and independent from the news desk. So it's an opinion section that's been calling the question or raising questions about your leadership, including extreme partisanship, that I think honestly is part of what you've exhibited today. So is it that as much as it is what you say are inaccuracies? That's a question. You called me a fierce partisan warrior. I am a wife, a mother, a daughter, a lifelong resident of Lancaster County. I've been a public servant. I've worked with Ray in public service to make our communities better places. He can tell you more about who I am. I've been engaged in politics with major questions about the partisanship of it all. And I elevated those questions the entire time of my run. I stepped into public service with Mayor Sirachi, and I also believe if you're reduced to the letter of your party affiliation behind your name, if you're ever involved in politics, that is an extreme concern. So I think my question for you, I find it a little bit telling that you had more to say about LNP and railing against me when asked about your vision for Lancaster. So more about that than your vision. So I'd love to hear more about your vision, but my real question is, how do you plan to rise above partisan politics and lead by example and think about ways that we can connect and unify? Honestly, that's what I'm trying to do in my role at the Steinman Institute, and I'd be happy to talk to you about it if we can rise to some kind of productive relationship.
Well, thank you for the question, Jess. And I'm happy to sit up here and debate you. I'm happy to debate you at LNP, as I've done before, on live stream so that it can't be altered. I never have a problem with taking hard questions. I never have a problem with debates. The issue is that you have been engaged in the community in a very partisan way. That's not a problem. You have the right to do that, just as we have done that. The issue is then when you come here and you're now in a collaboration with the news and sit up here, and actually Mr. Krasny is the one that attacked us at the last forum, and that's okay. This is our democracy. You're allowed to have sharp words for one another, but he basically said that because of the things that we say, that is the demise of the local news industry, and this group, clapped for that. That's not true. The reason that LNP was gifted away was, I'm not privy to the financials, but I assume it's because it was losing money. Now, Simon Institute, I assume, you can tell everyone if I'm wrong, is giving money to LNP for some period of time. We don't know how much because you haven't disclosed it. Everyone in the newsroom knows that. They know the leadership's opinion. They know that you were giving to our political opponents. They know where the donations are coming from, and so the question is it a partisan organization, or does it have the appearance of a partisan organization? And the answer is yes. So does that impact everything? No, it does not. There are stories that are objective, but when it touches on things that LNP politically cares about, there are often times where there are misstatements or things left out, and that happens regularly. And it is a problem for groups who use this as a baseline, and they ought to know it. And we ought to be able to have the free speech to say it and not be attacked because of this. These are things that we've brought up repeatedly. So we have the free speech right to bring that up. On the opinion issue, the other interesting thing was at the end of that forum, as Mr. Krasny said basically something along the lines of, you wouldn't believe how many letters to the editor we get about the border crisis. You would think we're in El Paso or something. So what that kind of tells me is there's a lot of letters to the editor about the border crisis that aren't being published. They're being suppressed because that's not something that LNP wants to talk about. Well, it's an issue that a lot of our constituents care about, including people, is Matt Johnson here? Including people who care about legal immigration, which we have a long and proud history of, because if you care about legal immigration, then you should want to stop illegal immigration, because then we can have more legal immigration. And LNP apparently, I'm reading into his comments, is suppressing those in the opinion section. So it's about the facts section and also the opinion section. And we can continue to have this debate. I'll debate it any time.
Let's take another question. I think we have some other subjects I know people want to get to as well, so I'm going to have a question from the back.
Thank you. First, to all commissioners, thank you for serving. We appreciate what you're trying to accomplish on our behalf. Secondly, returning to the topic of the prison, I have been thinking for some time about the juxtaposition geographically of one of our community's strongest assets, and that's the technical school. Stevens Institute, I believe, and the benefits that could be accrued by thinking about combining the education with the goals of keeping people out of prison and keeping them from going back into prison by strengthening the skill sets that they have and the education that they have to get fully immersed in a community, to be self-sufficient. And I'd love to hear over time, not necessarily right now, a real strong emphasis on putting a marriage together with what we've already got and what we need. Thank you. Thanks.
Agreed. That we're already doing some of that, but again, the space limitations are really what we have to deal with. But we have workforce development, collaboration. All these things are going on, but it's really limiting, quite frankly. So we are looking forward to more of those kind of things. So I think I speak for all of us, but if they want to speak for themselves, I think we agree with that.
Yeah, the one thing I would add is that that's an example of the listening session on the 10th, that we would capture that information and be able to then, as we start thinking about how we're going to structure it, to make sure that we have those partnerships and we have the adequate space to make that happen effectively.
That goes to reentry, which is, it used to be that somebody walked out of the prison and that was the end of it. And we really changed that over the last few years. There is a lot of work that goes into reentry now and trying to set people up for success so they don't come back.
We'll take one last question. We're running a little short on time.
Sure, and I will be quick, but one of the things that I can't help thinking about to kind of piggyback on that is the importance of prevention and knowing that we have longitudinal studies that show whenever children have access to high quality early learning, they're less likely to end up in the criminal justice system. And so when I think about creative ways, when we think about the old prison, like, wow, let's really think about prevention starting with our youngest children. I mean, we had Governor Shapiro this morning announce that we have a child and dependent care tax credit expansion, which is wonderful. It's putting dollars back in the hands of families who can better now afford quality childcare, except we don't have the access in Lancaster County. Only about 25% of children have access to high quality early learning. And I think that when we think about ultimate cost reductions and positive outcomes for our county and our city, we really do need to focus on quality early learning and the way that we can integrate it into capital campaigns, building structures, education. So that's just a comment that I have. Thank you.
We are coming close to our time for the day. I just want to see if you guys had any final thoughts before I have a couple announcements about upcoming events, if there's anything that you'd like to share before we wrap up today.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that we can come and have an honest conversation. I will stick around. I know there are others who have questions for me. I'll stick around so that you can have a chance to hit me with those questions.
Add my thanks again. Pleasure to be here to answer questions and give information. And of course, we're always available. We have the most meetings of any level of government. Quite frankly, I've lost count. It's hundreds a year. So come on out.
Same here. I'm going to stick around. So if you have any questions for me, I'm just thank you again for your vote of confidence to put me here in this seat. And I'm really excited about the opportunity and just improving services. One thing I learned during when I was campaigning is people didn't know what county commissioners did. So that's some of the basic things I think that we're going to focus on as well. And I think that's where, Ray, I thought you were going with the IT and the website to have it be more robust so the community really knows what it is that the commissioners do, what does county government do, and then all the services that are available too that people can take advantage of and they didn't realize they were there. So it seems really small, but it's a big deal. So I look forward to working on those areas as well.
So next year, our first question needs to be, what do the county commissioners do? So we can get that out of the way. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. As always, a video recording of today's forum will be on our website and YouTube channel next week. The goal with our forums is always to put experts in front of people so you can hear directly from them. So appreciate you all being here today. And if you'd like to continue the conversation on the new correctional facility, as Ray mentioned, there is a listening session next week on the new jail on Wednesday, January 10th.
There's also an email if they can't go there.
There's also an email that you can email if you can't go there. So you can find all that information on the new correctional facility website. I wanted to let you know we have 2 upcoming events for Hourglass. The first is our next First Friday Forum. That will be February 2nd. It is a topic that actually Andrea just brought up. It relates to early childhood education. We are going to have the leaders of the new Catherine Hershey schools. If you're familiar with them, it's an offshoot of the Milton Hershey School. They are planning to build 3 new schools here in Lancaster County that will be free for students age 0 to 5. Those are opening in 2026. So we're eager to hear about that initiative and how that's going to impact the community. We also have a community forum that will also be back here at the Ware Center, free public event on Thursday, February 8th. It's another topic that was raised several times today. That's going to be some election education. It's called Trust in Our Elections, a community conversation. We have some great panelists coming in, including former Governor of Pennsylvania, Tom Corbett, former federal judge John Jones, Commissioner DiAgostino will be joining us for that event. So I really hope that you will come back if you're interested in being a trusted voice this year and having reliable information on how our elections work. And you can check out more about that at hourglasslancaster.org/election 2024 and register for that event. I did promise one of our members that he could also plug an event coming up, and then we will send you off to the snow rainstorm that we're getting this weekend.
Thank you, Diana. I'll be quick. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Aaron Sherman. I'm president of Odyssey Group Wealth Advisors. I wanted to invite you all to a philanthropy symposium that we'll be hosting January 31st. It's called Intentional Giving, and it's going to focus on how donors can approach philanthropy with an intentional strategic plan that really kind of amplifies, your own mission and values. The reason behind this is that we see a lot of reactive giving in our community, and this may sound familiar. You maybe randomly respond to a mailer or a campaign request, or your accountant tells you to give away $5,000. But this leaves so much on the table in terms of what our community's wealth can accomplish and the good that your dollars can do. So we want to be encouraging donors to really think strategically about their philanthropy. We'll talk about how to approach giving intentionally and finding a process that works for you. We'll discuss giving across generations, how giving may tie into your estate plan, and some different execution methods. We'll have some great speakers, including Sam Bressi of Lancaster County Community Foundation, some legal and tax experts, and a family office advisor from Sageworth as well. And of course, there'll be plenty of opportunities to connect with other donors. So because Hourglass sits at, in many ways, the heart of philanthropy in Lancaster, we wanted to open up the event to all of you. Again, it'll be January 31st at Bent Creek Country Club, and I will be stationed somewhere up front out of the Commissioner's Way. So if you'd like to attend or want more information, just find me, please.
Thanks, Aaron. Thank you. Okay, thanks. I hope to see you at one of our events in February, and until then, have a great weekend. Thanks.